Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Today we have Richard Jones on Tech Talks Daily, and he's the CMO of a company called Cheetah Digital. And we're going to be talking about why smaller enterprise-specific marketing technology and unified data model platforms can provide far more benefits for customers than those of big players such as Adobe and Oracle and all those big names that you know. And speaking of big names, Cheetah Digital, the marketing tech platform, has actually collected for brands including Arsenal FC, Hilton, BBC, Citibank, Vodafone, McDonald's, Pizza Hut, Godiva, Urban Outfitters, and so many more. So I'm intrigued. So enough from me. Buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to the UK, where you can join me and Richard in conversation about all this and much more. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Richard. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for inviting me. Yeah, my name's Richard Jones. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Cheetah Digital, and I came to Cheetah Digital by way of an acquisition of a company I founded. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
I've got to ask that. I've got to ask for that origin story. You offered me a little teaser there, but where did your passion for tech and marketing, how did those worlds collide, and what put you on this path you're on right now?
Well, it was rather uninspiring originally getting into tech, because I actually joined a marketing agency straight out of university, and I was working on the IBM account for this marketing agency, and we were doing a whole bunch of stuff to help the IBM salespeople understand e-commerce, which I'm showing my age now. This was a new thing that nobody knew what it was meant to be. And part of that was doing sales promotions for the IBM sales team. And I thought, God, these guys are actually earning a fortune in this tech business. I need to get out of marketing agencies and get into tech. And so that's what I did originally, joining tech companies, getting into sales. And then it wasn't until quite a few years later, when I was in my kind of mid-30s, that I suddenly thought, I don't want to just sell technology. I want to go and build a company from scratch doing technology. So myself and a couple of former colleagues set up a company called Engage Sciences, which was a software as a service platform founded out of the UK that helped large brands and media companies run interactive experiences that collected data. So things like sweepstakes and quizzes and challenges, things that basically were engaging and offered usually a value exchange, a chance to win something, chance to unlock some content, whatever it may be, in return for getting data from those consumers. And so did that for over a decade, and then sold it to Cheetah Digital a couple of years ago.
Love that. And of course, that path did lead you to Cheetah Digital, like you mentioned there. But can you tell me a little bit more about the kind of problems that you set out to solve with technology, and what made you a little bit different, or the approach a little bit different from other solutions out there?
Yeah, well, prior to Cheetah Digital, what we were doing with Engage Sciences, which then many people know as Weigh In, because we rebranded to be Weigh In. The approach was really swimming against the tide at the time, because we were going to customers and saying, don't just put all your eggs in the sort of Facebook basket. Don't abrogate responsibility over knowing who your customers are by just using all the hyper targeting of content at scale through paid platforms like Facebook. Instead, isn't it safer, Mr. Marketer, if you actually started to build out your own database so that you didn't have to pay to play to reach your own audience? Whilst that might seem quite in vogue at the moment, and stuff that everybody's doing, I can assure you, a decade ago, quite a lot of very senior marketers at some very senior, very large brands would look at you like you were properly mental when you said that. Why do I need to know who my customers are? I can do all the targeting I want through platforms like Facebook and Google. And we built a good business, got to $10 million ARR, but it was really going against basically what Facebook was telling the entire market, which is, don't worry about building out your own database. We can help you hit anybody with a whole variety of different sort of personalization vectors that you can leverage, because we've got all the data on earth about customers and loads of data partnerships to augment even what a company like Facebook has. We found enlightened people that wanted to hedge against putting this abrogation of responsibility to Facebook to know who your customers are. And there was some forward-thinking marketers that were thinking about marketing in terms of the common principles versus just really thinking it's all about this fancy new ad tech stuff. But it was against it was definitely swimming against the tide. Now, the acquisition of Wayan to Cheetah was really powered because things were starting to turn. And we'd had Cambridge Analytica. There's a scandal which had broken, which for me was the moment that the sort of privacy bubble really popped and people started to think, well, hold on a minute, what's going on here? We've got really no data controls. It allows you to manipulate audiences on social media to get to know things that, this whole kind of value chain of people collecting, harvesting data without consumers really knowing what they were doing, selling it on through an ad tech chain of companies that repackage it and then resurface it up. And it's really kind of the Wild West. And actually, society as a whole needs to do something about it. And so then you've got GDPR, you've got all this regulation coming in. And what actually that all meant for marketers is suddenly those that had been, well, I don't need to know who my customers are, I can do everything through Facebook and Google, suddenly were like, that's not something we can guarantee moving forward. And a lot of the ways that these big platforms do personalization of content at scale to an audience you don't know was getting taken away. Things like third-party data was getting hammered, the data integrations and partnerships and the way they were scraping data from across the open web was getting hit with regulation. And Cheetah Digital, which was a platform that basically many people will know for doing kind of cross-channel messaging, was looking to solve for that issue for their customers and have a platform that made it easier for their customers to build their marketing lists and get to know people by asking them stuff, the old-fashioned way of doing personalization, which Forrester had coined as zero-party data, and that's data that you get directly from consumers by asking them about themselves, and you collect consent and stuff transparently and build your database out like that. And so that's what powered that acquisition.
It's crazy. I remember that time. It really was quite crazy. There was new businesses coming along and saying, hey, we don't even need a website anymore. We'll do everything on Facebook. It might sound very odd for that school of thought now, but that's what people were doing. And I think even more recently, there's things like influencers that have built a brand on Instagram alone, but then Instagram tweaks that algorithm and that's it. They disappear almost overnight and lose that following. Are you noticing brands and entrepreneurs, etc., waking up to that fact now?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I think the only thing that as a marketer you can actually count on, or as a brand that you can actually count on, is that the big platforms, particularly Facebook, are prone to changing the rules of engagement at any time to your detriment and using it to monetize the control over the fact that you may well have abrogated your responsibility over your customers or taken out other channels and have been too channel dependent. So I think people are very careful now of being too over-reliant on any single vendor, any single channel, any single platform. And regulation is only making that even more important because that regulatory environment is changing all the time.
And for people listening quite new to this space, can you tell me a little bit more about the growth of customer engagement suites that ingest various kinds of data, such as streaming data, point of sale, weather data, all according to a business requirements? Because again, it's quite a big movement at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And for me, I see this as part of this trend of businesses needing to get better engaging and interacting with their own customers in a more sophisticated way that respects what's going on around privacy. In the old days, obviously, or I say old days, not that old, 10 years ago, if you wanted to do and deliver all of your hyper-personalized content at scale through platforms like Facebook, you didn't need the level of sophistication that you do today if you want to do that through your own channels using your own data. And I think that's the key thing. So customer engagement platforms and their reliance and their use of machine learning and AI and all those capabilities that are inherent to what many people call customer data platforms is really an illustration of what's happening. So think about it from the perspective of as the messaging industry has evolved over the last sort of 20 years. It used to be fairly simple. You'd create your marketing list and you decide what offers you want to send people, and you'd create a segment and you'd send a message off. As we've got more sophisticated in our ability as brands and as marketers to be able to engage people, we do so off the back of lots more data. So things like messaging platforms, email marketing platforms, they now all have what we call customer data platforms inside. It's CDP inside, if you like. And that's basically the ability to bring in all of these different data types, as you said, batch streaming, ingest it from many different sources, everything from purchase history to what's gone on in loyalty programs to the weather, and use all of that data to basically create more personalized messages and offers that are more relevant to the audience you're sending and are sent at the right time on the right channel that's going to maximize engagement and hopefully conversions. And it's really the power of data that allows you to go to that next level in terms of personalization off your own data sets, and messaging on your own channels.
And I'm curious, how is growth like this impacting and maybe even reshaping the industry? It's
certainly reshaping the industry, and these broad sort of trends of how consumers actually interact with different types of content, ads and messages that are being sent them on different channels. Because I'll give you a sneak bit of some research that we're doing. So every year we do a digital consumer trends index research, which goes out there, 5,000 customers across 5 different markets, and ask them lots of questions around how they're interacting with digital marketing, ads, attitudes to privacy, all the sorts of things that are useful for marketers to understand and make sense check their strategy for the new year. And so we've just got in the raw data for what will be the 2022 Digital Consumer Trends Index. Literally got it in yesterday. And actually over the course of, year to year in this sort of weird pandemic world we're living in, it's very clear that the digital acceleration is happening in different ways. So what we've seen is when asked when did you most how often did you make a purchase on different channels? What we've seen is that making a purchase from a social app, making a purchase from a social post, after you've seen a social post, compared to making a purchase after you've been sent an email, those 3 channels have completely swapped over in terms of the likelihood to purchase over the course of the year. So it used to be social ads and social posts and then email a year ago. Now it's email at the top of both social ads and social posts for driving commerce in consumers. So you're seeing that as indicative of this growth of consumers and brands having more of a direct relationship and cutting out some of the large social platforms, which I believe is a direct correlation to ad tech disruptions that are really brought around by privacy.
And can you also expand on how businesses might also be using machine learning and artificial intelligence to segment and analyse that data? Because for a long time, all this data was all over the place, and people have just started to learn to clean that data up and get it talking to each other and unlock insights that weren't available a year or 2 ago. So how are they using this technology?
Yeah, and the funny thing is about AI and ML is that every vendor on earth tries to claim that their technology is AI powered and fancy machine learning and all the rest of it that's in there. But really, the use of this stuff comes down to how well you make it possible for marketers to be able to interpret that data, to be able to create models, and then to use that to power their business. And what we're seeing is that there's a lot of vendors have some sort of basic, what I would call sort of black box ML or AI, which might do a little bit of incremental improvement in the technology or the output of the outcomes that come from using the technology. But actually the real power is in when technology allows the marketer to behave like a citizen data scientist, because it's lots of businesses have lots of data, but quite often it's locked away in data warehouses. And it's actually not very actionable. Nobody can really get at it. You'd have to go and have a data scientist to go in and interrogate that data to pull out some findings that then can create a file that then can be loaded into another platform to send an offer and all that. But that's not real time. It's very clunky. and because of the level of effort involved, probably doesn't get done that much. But if you think about, if you can make technology, so the marketing platforms that really marketers use to actually engage and interact and send offers and what have you to their audience, if you can empower those marketing users to be a citizen data scientist, that's really where you start to unlock the power of AI and ML. And Gartner actually defines a citizen data scientist as a person who creates or generates models that use advanced diagnostic analytics or predictive and prescriptive capabilities, but whose primary job is outside the field of statistics and analytics. And that's the whole point. It's making the marketers be able to leverage the power of the data and to create their own data models and then use that to improve the business. Things like send time optimization, propensity, clustering models. You're trying to tweak those different models with different facets that might be important for the marketer, or also create entirely new models which are going to help them drive better outcomes. That's the power of AI and ML.
And before you came on the podcast today, I was doing a little bit of research on you. One of the things that really stood out was your belief of leveraging the same data model with the customer engagement data platform is key to absolutely everything, especially if you're building software from the ground up. Is that something you can expand on?
Yeah, and it really comes down to this point of making data actionable versus just having a 360-degree view of the customer. So one of the benefits of having all of your marketing data in one place is that you can have a 360-degree view of the customer. So regardless of how they interact with you, whether they're coming into your store or whether they're coming online or whether they're interacting with you on social, whatever it may be, you're able to understand that individual and all of their interactions on any different channel over time across different programs, loyalty programs, in-store POS, whatever it may be, and really start to use that 360-degree view of the consumer in order to treat them as an individual and to personalize, offers and content to get the maximum relevance and conversion rate. Now, that's the goal, is this 360-degree view. But you can get there and not make it the data actionable. And one of the ways that we see that in the industry is you get an IT-driven view to create this sort of single source of truth. And they're going to invest in a data warehouse and plug in all these data feeds from all over the place. And they've got this, fantastic data repository. It's a single source of truth. But it does require someone in IT to go in and interrogate. And it's not there. The data's not actionable. It's not there sitting at the fingertips of the marketer that's trying to figure out the right audience, the right segment for a very particular offer that they have that they need to send out later on that afternoon. And so what we've basically seen is not that IT shouldn't have their data warehouses and the single source of truth. That's important. It's got a whole other set of benefits for the business. But all of the data that's relevant for marketers needs to be held in a customer engagement platform that allows them to leverage that data and to make it actionable in real time. And that's where the difference between making data useful and having it something that's locked away in the vaults of IT really will drive competitive differentiation.
And I would imagine a big part of your role is monitoring the latest tech trends and finding out what's going to dominate the future, etc. So is there any tech trends that particularly excite you at the moment?
Yes, there is. I'd say it's exciting because of the opportunity for marketers and for brands to help shape the future. And so the trend I'm referring to is actually what's being super hyped at the moment as the Metaverse. Yeah. And what it really is the sort of next stage of augmented reality and virtual reality, which no doubt is going to completely disrupt and drive innovation in a whole variety of different aspects of our lives, everything from shopping to how we experience and engage business meetings with each other or interact with our family and friends. It's going to be a huge area of disruption and innovation over the coming years, as basically almost every part of our life can be taken into the virtual world, into an augmented reality world. And the sort of interaction between computing and how humans engage with it is going to become much, much more intertwined. And I think it's a fascinating way that our lives, powered by technology, are going to radically change over the next coming decade or two. The bit that I think is the opportunity is for marketers and brands with our significant, dollars in terms of advertising budget, as well as our, lobbying capabilities and our influence over regulation, government regulation. We've got an opportunity to influence how that metaverse is created. And I think it's super important because if you think about what's the issue with social media at the moment, it's because it's been built around this construct of advertising dollars, right? So it's been built to maximize and monetize an advertising construct. So we have all of these issues around the attention economy and trying to keep people locked into those platforms in order to have more opportunities to serve them ads, and algorithms which decide what we see to keep us on the platform, which also drives disinformation and is creating a whole host of different societal problems that we're dealing with today. It's directly because we just let these platforms build themselves based around advertising. Well, when you think about the metaverse, which goes across all of our lives, everything from schooling and our kids and all the rest of it, we have to think as a society, do we want that to be advertising led? Do we want that to be all about the attention economy? Do we want disinformation to be at the heart of that system? Or do we want to have simple building regulations for the metaverse, just as well as we have building regulations for buildings that we go and walk in or planes that we go and fly in? We expect certain regulations in those industries to protect us as citizens. And I think the exact same conversation is now starting to happen with the building of the metaverse.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I must admit, I was a little bit cynical about it to begin with, but having spent a bit of time with the Oculus Quest 2 the last couple of weeks, it almost brought back memories of the first time the internet came, the first time the smartphone arrived. Yeah. It probably felt like that step-up game-changer moment.
Yes, it is. It's going to be very fascinating. So, we'll have to watch this space. And I think we've all got a role to play to make sure that some of the issues we're dealing with now as society with social media, mental health problems, all the rest of it, aren't just amplified in the metaverse. And that involves regulation, involves a conversation of citizens and society over what kind of experience, what kind of protections we want for our children and for society as a large in that metaverse space.
100% with you on that. And Cheetah Digital is a marketing tech platform, and I believe you guys have collected over 2 billion data entries for some pretty big brands. There's a long list of Arsenal, Hilton, BBC, Citibank, Vodafone, McDonald's, Pizza, etc. But can you tell the listeners a little bit more about why smaller enterprise-specific marketing technology and unified data models and those platforms can provide far more benefits for customers than those from bigger players such as Adobe and Oracle, because it can be quite an intimidating space for the smaller enterprise, can't it?
Yeah, it can. One of the things with the marketing clouds, let's call them that, these aren't companies that create technology from scratch. That's the reality. These are the companies that buy the largest vendor in a particular space. They take they make the acquisition, and then they scale that technology across a massive global sales force. That's their business model. And then they don't tend to drive innovation with the acquisitions they make. They're served on the public market. It's about driving profit. So there is some weaknesses in the marketing cloud model when it comes to innovation. And we're really seeing that when we look at things like customer data platforms and this sort of what we call the CDP inside movement for customer engagement platforms. Real Story Group is an analyst that covers the space, and they did a good thing on Salesforce's Audiences 360, which is their customer data platform. Basically said this really isn't up to scratch. It's not even anywhere near the private, the independent market for CDPs. And it's really just a bolt on, hoping that you'll buy it if you've bought the rest of the Salesforce technology. And really, when we're thinking about what's the benefit of going something that isn't the marketing cloud, it's to leverage innovation. And when you're looking at things like customer engagement platforms that have a customer data platform actually built inside, so you can leverage that with all the AI and the ML to drive the right offer at the right time, the right message at the right time to the right person. You don't have that capability to the level that you've got in companies like Cheetah and others that are independents in the marketing cloud. So it's really about innovation. There's no question about that. If you want to go to get innovation, to leverage innovation, it's not the best place to go to a marketing cloud. You may have a good relationship with them. You may be able to, leverage some commercial agreements that you have. But if you want to be on the cutting edge of innovation, you need to go to the venture capital and the private equity powered world, where they're spending more money on innovation typically than they're getting back in revenues often. That's the beating heart of innovation.
And a question, we began the podcast today talking about your origin story, and as we come full circle now, I'm going to have a bit of fun with you and ask you what's been the soundtrack to your origin story. Is there a particular song or piece of music that just seems to have accompanied you on your career, or on those long distance flights and noise cancelling earphones, or just helping get your head in the zone before going in a meeting or going on stage? Is there a song and story you can share with us?
Yeah, there is actually. And it's got nothing to do, with trying to pep me up and get me ready for meetings or anything like that. But it's a song that has always been a sort of leveling influence for me. And that is an old song from the 70s, a soul song from a singer called William DeVaughn. And the song is entitled Be Thankful for What You've Got. And it's a wonderful song to just allow you to step back, take a breath in and realize all's good. Don't worry about this next meeting. Don't worry about the outcome of today. Be thankful for what you've got.
Awesome. Great choice there, and a great message as well to leave us on. But before I do let you go, for anyone listening wanting to find out more information about any of the topics we talked about today, your work or contacting your team, what would you say is the best starting point?
Yeah, so LinkedIn, very active on LinkedIn. So come and check me out there, Richard Jones on LinkedIn, or go to cheetahdigital.com. There's a whole load of content, thought leadership stuff. And then there's the Thinking Caps podcast, which I co-host. So all three good ways to check out what we're up to.
Awesome. I'll add all the links to the show notes there. So tell me a bit about the podcast. How long have you been doing that, and how often do you go live?
Yeah, we go live once a week, and I've been doing it now for about 18 months. Doing it with Tim Glom, who is a colleague of mine at Cheetah, who also used to be a producer for Jackass back in the day.
Wow.
So he's had a very interesting journey into technology, that's for sure. So yeah, I've been doing that and talking all things digital transformation, digital acceleration, and I've had some wonderful guests over the years.
Oh man, love it. I'll be checking that out myself. And I've loved so much about the topics we've covered today in a short amount of time, really. And I love how you've worked in technology, specifically building marketing technology for the likes of Adobe, Oracle, and I've been CMO integrating martech to deliver business results. That's what it's all about. But more than anything, your very human story at the heart of it all. So thank you for taking the time to sit down with me, sharing that story, and leaving us with a great track too. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So a huge thank you to Richard for coming on today and talking about the growth of customer engagement suites and taking the time to come on here and share how businesses can use machine learning and artificial intelligence to segment and analyse data, and why leveraging the same data model with the customer engagement data platform is key if you're building software from the ground up. Let me know your thoughts, as always, on anything we discussed today by emailing me directly at techblogwriter@outlook.com, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram at Neil C. Hughes, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. But that's it for today. I'll return again tomorrow, same time, same place. But until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.